afternoon, everyone. How are you? I hope you all are doing so well. This is me, Indrani, and welcome to your favorite show, Immigration Law. As you know, in every episode of this show, we usually discuss about different types of visa processing, different types of immigration process, and as well as some immigration law. And as usual, today we have a special guest with us. Today we have Miss Mohaimina Haque with us. Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm very fine. ম্যাম একটু আপনার কাছে বাংলায় জানতে চাই কেমন লাগছে আসলে আমাদের আজকের আয়োজনে আপনাকে আমরা ইনভাইট করেছি এবং কিছু সময় আপনার থেকে চেয়ে নিয়েছি নিশ্চয়ই ইমিগ্রেশন ল এবং এভরিথিং নিয়ে আপনার সাথে আলাপ হবে।
অবশ্যই আপনাদের সবাইকে অনেক ধন্যবাদ আমাকে আজকে এখানে বলার জন্য এবং আমার এক্সপার্টিজ আর নলেজ শেয়ার করার জন্য। I'm originally Bangladeshi and I help a lot of Bangladeshis in the United States, and I'm very glad that today I have the platform to share my knowledge and wisdom.
Thank you so much, ma'am. As you know, usually we discuss about some immigration laws as well as visa processing, how to apply for a USA visa. And first of all, I want to know some different types of immigration visas.
Yes, absolutely. So when someone thinks about immigration visas, you can actually categorize them in two broad categories. One is the family-based petition, number one. The other is the employment-based petition. So let's first discuss about the family-based petition.
Sure.
Family-based petition means someone who is married to a United States citizen, a children of a U.S. citizen, applying for their parents or spouses, siblings. So this is all family-based petition. And then there is employment-based petition, which we have extraordinary ability, EB-1A. We have EB-2, national interest waiver. We have EB-3 for employees. And even within EB-3, we have employees of varying different skill sets. For example, skilled, unskilled, and professional. So when someone thinks about immigration, again, it comes into two broad categories, but we also have some other non-immigrant categories. For example, if someone does not intend to obtain a green card, but want to invest in the United States, one of the most popular category is E2. And E2 is not reserved for everyone, but the US and Bangladesh has a treaty which allows citizens of Bangladesh to apply for E2 visa if they make an investment in business in the United States. And the good news about E2 is it does not have a minimum threshold, unlike EB-5, which is another investment category visa. But EB-5 leads to green card. However, E2 does not lead to green card, but it allows someone to come to US to own and operate their business and live in the US so long as their business is operational.
Thank you, ma'am. So if someone wants to be an immigrant, so which category should to apply first? Which one you prefer as immigrant, non-immigrant, or a visitor visa?
So, it depends on someone's personal circumstances. Each person have very unique circumstance. If someone wants to come here, let's say as a student, so that will definitely give them a lot of credentials. That's a non-immigrant category, but getting a degree in the United States open up a lot of opportunities. And from there onward, students who are coming to study in the US, they look for a path, for example, H-1B, which is a lottery-based visa system that employers usually file. And it's extremely popular in the STEM field, like science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So most of the engineers from Bangladeshi origin, they do end up getting H-1B. And then ultimately the employer decide whether they want to apply for EB-2 or EB-3, whichever is more fitting. That's the path that have been taken by many in the past. Something that I'm seeing a trend is EB-1A, extraordinary ability. We have Bangladeshis who are doing wonderful contributions in many areas, in science and engineering and arts and humanities. And we are seeing their contribution in Bangladesh worldwide. And I encourage those people to consider EB-1A. Sometimes people feel discouraged because they think they need to have an award of a major recognition, an international award. That is one of the criteria, but there are many more. For example, if they have been a judge or have, evaluated works of others, or they have had
Wow.
membership in organization where it's extremely hard to acquire that membership. So EB-1A is something that I do encourage people to look into. Yes, it is difficult, but if we look into someone's background and see that they meet the criteria, we encourage them to apply for EB-1A. Then there's EB-2 NIW. NIW stands for National Interest Waiver. If someone does something, a work, that could be of substantial merit and of national importance in the United States, it's likely they may qualify for EB-2 NIW, but note all these categories have a very high evidentiary burden. And that is our task, to evaluate the evidence and making sure that the candidates meet the requirement. And there is EB-3, which is another extremely popular category, but EB-3 is a process that's driven by U.S. employer, because the first step has to be done by the United States employer. They need to get a permission from the U.S. Department of Labor, which is called a PERM process, where they'll have to demonstrate that they were unable to find any employees in the United States, which is why they're hiring foreign employee. And foreign employee are supposed to pay a higher wage, which we call is the prevailing wage. So sometimes it's hard to find employer because of these regulatory requirements, because the employer take these steps and then it gets expensive for them. But nevertheless, it's still one of the best category to attract talent from foreign countries.
Ma'am, which one is the fastest visa type for US?
So that's actually a good question. It depends because of varying processing time. One of the fastest, which should be, is, if someone is married to a U.S. citizen, if you think about the family category, the spouse of a U.S. citizen or parents of a U.S. citizen, what we call this category as IR. IR stands for immediate relative. So technically, these are supposed to be faster, given, the U.S. government prefers and have a strong emphasis on family reunification. But nowadays, especially in the aftermath of COVID, there have been a big backlog. So family petition, I would say it's the parents of United States citizen, children of U.S. citizen, and spouses of U.S. citizen. That would be faster. And for EBs, which is the employment-based, EB-1A, it depends on the priority date. Each country has priority date. EB-2 NIW, again, if your work is of national interest waiver. It all depends on processing time. EB-3 takes a longer time. Part of the reason is the employer needs to get permission from the U.S. Department of Labor. And back in the days, they could get permission within 6 to 8 months. Nowadays, we're seeing that just to get the permission from the Department of Labor is taking as long as 18 months. So even if someone found an employer who sponsored them, it's taking quite a long time to get the whole process approved, almost cumulatively 3 to 4 years to get an EB-3 visa and come to the United States.
In my country, I just heard that so many people are waiting for so long, more than 4 or 5 years for a family visa. Why it takes so long?
It depends which category of the family. If someone has applied for a sibling, that's taking on an average in Bangladesh right now almost 16 years to get the whole process completed.
Oh my God.
For siblings of U.S. citizen, that's a very long wait. So if you think about the hierarchy, like which one takes faster, as I said, it will be spouse, children, and parents of U.S. citizen, relatively faster. That would be on an average, maybe 2 years. But everything else, especially like siblings, that is an average of 16 years at the moment.
Then which one is the easiest way to immigrate to USA?
Something to consider, of course, when we talk about an immigration category, like immigrants, right? That means someone wants a green card. There are ways to explore the non-immigrant category, which I feel like, those are more least explored, but those categories can actually get someone to United States. It will not lead to green card right away. For example, E2, as I mentioned, it's an investor's visa. It's a non-immigrant visa, relatively faster. Bangladesh has a treaty with the United States. States. It's about finding the right business opportunity where someone can invest or in the process of actively investing, and making sure that the business that they're investing in, it will create job opportunities for US citizens as well. The benefit of an E2 visa is, let's say in a family, if one spouse is a principal investor and they come on E2, the other spouse is automatically eligible once they come to the United States to get an employment authorization document, EAD. In other words, work permit, which basically means if the other spouse gets a work permit and eventually finds an employer who would sponsor for a green card, this family who initially came on E2 has a chance to become a green card holder. Again, it's a different route, but E2 is a viable option. And then there are options like L1. If someone have a business in Bangladesh and they want to create a subsidiary or affiliate in the United States, L1 is another category that's relatively faster. And the third category that I would recommend is O1. Just like EB-1A, extraordinary ability, O1 has pretty much the same criteria. It does not lead to green card, but a faster processing time. And the candidate needs to establish that he or she possess extraordinary ability, skills, or knowledge that they can contribute to the US.
Now I want to ask about something about spouse visa. What are the different types of spouse visas available for immigrating to the United States?
Spouse visa, there's just one category. If someone gets married to a US citizen, process-wise, we say that they first need to file this application called I-130 on the USCIS website. And if the spouse is already in the United States, let's say someone is already in the United States and they wanted to adjust the status, that is available. And that is actually relatively easier to do. And the wait time may be a little bit shorter. If someone wants to do a consular processing, meaning the spouse is abroad and they got married to a US citizen spouse, in that scenario, it's extremely important about the evidence. I usually ask my clients to write a timeline of when did they meet, where did they meet, how did they meet, how did the relationship evolve, so that USCIS and the US Embassy, they understand that the relationship was entered in good faith. Because there have been so many frauds about procuring green card through marriage-based, people should take it extremely seriously, the evidences that they offer as a part of the application. It's just not sufficient to offer wedding pictures, but it's also important to get affidavits and letters from friends and family who can testify about the relationship. How did the spouses meet? The better the application is prepared, it increases the likelihood of success and the processing time.
How does the CR1 visas differ from IR1?
So for immediate relative, it is faster. Any visas that is immediate relative, which will be spouse, parents, children, it will be a lot faster processing. But part of the processing, sometimes delay happens because it depends on how the application was prepared. When we take a case, we want to make sure that we are providing enough evidences. So for anyone who is preparing their application themselves and they just got married to a US citizen, I would suggest please be mindful of sharing your story. How did you meet? Where did you meet? When did you meet? Don't just submit the wedding pictures, but also share your story so that they understand that the relationship was genuine.
What are the eligibility requirements for obtaining a spouse visa?
So eligibility requirement, first and foremost, that the marriage was entered in good faith. And that's where all the evidentiary requirement comes into place. Because of, as I say, there have been so many malfeasance in the past, it's extremely important that the relationship evidence is documented and provided very well. Secondly, the spouse who is applying, they need to have a certain qualifying income depending on the household size. They also have to provide what we call as an affidavit of support, their tax returns. They need to provide information of taxes that they have filed in the US for the last 3 years. and need to provide a copy of the tax return. We recommend to provide copies of the last 3 years, but they must provide copy of at least 1 year. But the information about their total income, they will need to provide for the last 3 years. And they will have to provide their pay stubs if they work as what we call as a W-2, which basically means an employee. If they own a business in the United States, they will have to provide their financial statement. All these financial documents are required to show that they can sponsor their spouse and bring them to the United States and support them.
If someone already have applied for a spouse visa, but for some reason, maybe she or he got blacklisted or just trapped into any kind of legal issues in our country, which difficulties they're gonna face?
Usually, the term they use is administrative processing. For some reason, if they don't issue a visa right away, they say they're doing administrative processing. There's a lot of background check that takes place, which is something, we are not completely privy to, which may be for national security, which may be for, extra name check for whatever reason that the State Department can take. In terms of steps, I would suggest, of course, talk to a qualified attorney and get professional advice to see what could be done. Sometimes you can ask for a supervisory intervention in the U.S. Embassy. If a supervisor can review the file, it's not guaranteed whether it will expedite it, because some things are beyond everyone's control. If it's, if an application is being checked for national security or other administrative processing. But it's highly unlikely if someone is blacklisted or if they have misrepresented, they will be notified at the end of the interview, like what they have misrepresented. The simple thing is, it may sound simple, but it's extremely important, is to be very forthright in your application. If the visa application asks, have you been ever denied for a visa before? Please put down yes. Because if you put no, you will actually get into further trouble, and that's going to delay processing. So the best thing is to complete the application as accurately as possible. Be forthright, be proactive. If there anything is in your background, accept the responsibility, show remorse, and show how you have taken steps to rehabilitate.
Which documentation is required to prove the authenticity of that marriage?
The U.S. citizen spouse, if they're naturalized, then their naturalization certificate. If they were born in the United States, their birth certificates. These are documents that are absolutely necessary. When the petition is approved and it moved to consular processing, when the NVC National Visa Center evaluate the application, at that time, they'll have to provide police certificate. And something that's actually very common in Bangladesh that I usually see for police certificate, when anyone uploads it, make sure you upload the front and also the back of the police certificate. Sometimes they reject it because they want to see the back of the police certificate as well. So there are simple things like this where, the handling of the documentation, if you do it properly, it can avoid the delays. And sometimes they just come back and say, please, we want this document or that document. So these are the must-do required documents. But there are also secondary evidences, which I discussed earlier about the authenticity of the relationship. So that's extremely vital as well. And that is something submitted to the USCIS at the initial stage of the marriage-based green card process.
Then how long does it typically take to process a spouse visa?
I would say on an average 1.5 to 2 years.
Okay. In between, if someone got pregnant or someone might have a child, then which thing should they do?
If someone have a child and the child parent is a U.S. citizen, there is a process called CBRA, Consular Birth Report Abroad. The U.S. citizen parent can actually report the birth of the child born in a foreign country, and the child will also get U.S. citizenship.
We have some questions from our audience. So one of those are, I was working as H-1B and now enrolled in a university as F-1. Do I have to go back to my country to apply for a student visa? No.
So, if you are already in the United States, in order to change your status, you will need to maintain a valid non-immigrant status. So, if
Okay.
you have a valid H-1B, in a valid H-1B, you can change it to F-1. And nowadays, they are offering premium processing for F-1. So that's something you can take advantage of so that you are in a valid H-1B while you apply for the new F-1 visa. But if you're not on a valid non-immigrant category, then yes, you will need to return to your home country.
It's now again about spouse visa. What forms do I need to submit for it first in very primary stage?
The very first step is I-130. You will have to submit I-130 and also make sure you submit I-130A, which is the spouse beneficiary form. Because if you miss out I-130A, they may reject it and ask you to complete that. So the initial stage is I-130, I-130A. After I-130 is approved, then the case will be moved to National Visa Center. And the National Visa Center will send you a case number and an invoice number with which you will create your login credentials and enter into the system of National Visa Center to complete DS-260, which is an extremely thorough form which will ask for information of your spouse for addresses ever since the age of 16. They will ask for information of social media. They will ask for information about employment history. So DS-260 is another extremely thorough application that needs to be completed after the initial phase, once the petition is approved by the USCIS.
Now I want to switch the discussion about student visa. There are so many students every year. They want to go to USA for higher studies. Some of them want to go take a bachelor degree. Some of them go for a master's or PhD. Then what are the basic criteria for the student visa there?
So for a student visa, the first and foremost requirement is to get a document called I-20. I-20 is a document that is issued by the university once they gain admission. After that, the main thing for a student visa is to demonstrate, because a student visa is a non-immigrant visa. If someone comes to an interview and say that I'm going to United States to stay there forever, chances are the student visa will get denied. Therefore, it's extremely important when you apply for a student visa, you demonstrate your ties to your home country. You're going to the United States to acquire higher education, and you will return back to your home country. What type of ties you have? Your family, financial ties. If anyone have any companies or family business, then mention about that, because that is extremely helpful. Because keep in mind, as F-1 visa is a non-immigrant, it's not an immigrant category. Therefore, even if you have a long-term ambition to stay in the United States, you need to demonstrate you will return to your home country.
Apart from student visa, there are, I know, so many categories for a non-immigrant visa. Could you please tell us the categories?
Absolutely. There are some that I mentioned. L1. L1 is for any type of multinational company that wants to establish subsidiary or affiliate in the United States. And then there's E2, which is the investor's visa. E2 does not have a minimum investment requirement, unlike EB-5, which does, but E2 does not have that. But for E2, you need to show that the investment that you are making into the business is sufficient enough for the business to be operational. E2 is extremely popular. There is J1. J1 visa is awarded to scholars and researchers. J1 is a great visa because it also allows people to come to United States, go back to the home country, contribute to their home country as well. Sometimes there are government grants involved in J1, which is why some J1 visa holders may be subject to what we call is a 2-year home residency requirement. After the end of J1 visa, they're supposed to go back to their home country and at least stay there for 2 years. There are many categories. of visas. Then there is O1, which is extraordinary ability. That is something extremely popular these days. I'm seeing so many applicants of extraordinary ability who are applying for O1. So I would actually encourage people to look into these non-immigrant visa categories, because sometimes that allows to come to United States faster, have a great life here, and then explore how to become an immigrant in the US later.
Now I have some question from our viewers. Then what are the difference between PR and having a green card?
PR means permanent residency, and green card is basically just another word for PR, permanent residency. So the correct word is LPR, legal permanent resident, and green card is something that we know it more commonly. So it's pretty much the same.
Which things are most important for having a passport?
To become a US citizen, again, there are lots of requirements depending on which category someone got a green card. For example, a spouse of a United States citizen can get a passport within 3 years. They can apply for the passport within 3 years, which is one of the fastest. And that will also mean that they'll have to meet the requirement. And we have requirements such as physical presence and continuous presence. In the past 3 years, they need to stay in the United States more than half of the time. They cannot be abroad for more than 6 months, because these things will count against them. For most of the people, they'll have to wait 5 years after obtaining the legal permanent residency to apply for their passport.
Okay, now once again, a question from our viewers. Which visa to apply for just visiting, B1 or B2? Bank balance and what documents will be needed? Please tell us.
Absolutely. So B2 visa is for pleasure, B1 is for business. And in terms of if you're visiting the United States for business, I would encourage you to get a letter, an invitation letter from an organization that has invited you. If you're going there for a conference, get a letter. If you're going to meet someone or to have a business dealings, it's always good to have a letter from the US. On that letter, it should be specified when you're coming to the US, when you're returning to the US, what will be your proposed activities in the US, and the fact that you are paying for your stay in the United States, or if it's an organization that's inviting you, or if they are paying for it. These are some of the items that should be in the letter. In terms of bank statements, yes, please take at least 3 months of bank statements. If you run a business and if you happen to have audited financial statements, that will give you more credibility if you can take that. That will be extremely helpful. If you currently have a job and you took a leave from your job to visit the United States, get a letter from your employer that grants your leave and show that letter at the interview that you're going there for a very brief stay and you will return to your home country.
There are so many people from our country go there for some cultural events, for singing or dancing events as well. But maximum time they go as a tourist. Is it legal?
There are cultural exchange visas, depending on what's the invitation for. As a tourist, if they're coming to perform, tourist is only for business or pleasure. And there for cultural exchange, there are visas like, as I said, M1, J1, depending on what the purpose is. It depends on the organization that's inviting them. So this is something, the organization that's extending the invitation from the United States, they must be extremely aware for what purpose they're inviting the foreign visitor and apply and sponsor for the right category.
Then it's kind of illegal, right? Going there as a tourist and earning money from the event.
It depends. You cannot be an employee. As a tourist, you cannot be an employee at all. But if you're coming here to perform for in a dance recital or in a competition, and you're coming as a contractor, for example, let's say that your company abroad is bringing you here, right? The company can get paid, but you cannot be paid a salary.
Okay. Another question. I have a non-immigrant visa that will expire soon, and I would like to obtain a new visa. Do I have to repeat the entire visa application process?
Depending on which non-immigrant visa you have, you will have to apply for a renewal. Now, if you maintain the eligibility requirement of your initial non-immigrant visa, you will be eligible for a renewal. For some reason, if you don't meet the eligibility requirement at the time of the renewal, then you will have to consider the non-immigrant visa depending on your circumstances.
Okay. Ma'am, what is the I-94?
I-94 is what we call as an arrival and departure record.
Okay.
When someone comes to United States, they're issued I-94 by CBP officer, our Custom Border Patrol officer. Typically, people get it for 6 months if they're coming for a non-immigrant visa. And if you are here in the US and you want to change to another category, we recommend don't change to another non-immigrant category right after you come in, because you come here to visit. If your circumstances have changed, you wait 60 days, 90 days, and you change it to another category, so long as your I-94 is still valid. If you have an unexpired I-94, you can change it. If you have an expired I-94, that basically means you're illegal in the United States and you're out of status.
Then there is a question that I didn't file an I-94 when I left USA. What should I do now?
You first need to go to the CBP website where you can track the I-94 and see what the record is showing. They're going to ask for your first name, last name, date of birth, and your passport number. That will give you an idea whether they're showing you have left the United States or not. So my suggestion would be to check out the CBP website and look for I-94 record locator.
Okay. And next question is, my category is F1. Will the case status change if I get married, or the petition will be dismissed?
If you're currently in the United States on F1 and you're residing in the US, and if you get married to a US citizen, you will be able to change your status to green card.
Ma'am, we came at the end of the show today. So I want to know that what's your preference for our Bangladeshi community that they can apply a US visa very easily for a different type of categories. Which category is good for our people?
So, it depends on each person's individual circumstances. Because when we talk with clients, we try to understand their situation, we try to understand their strength, where they fit in. There is no one size fit all for everyone. So it's extremely custom and tailored. My suggestion is the Bangladeshi community has been doing extremely well. We get the brightest students from Bangladesh every year who come to United States, who contribute to our economy and doing so well. And I would recommend, of course, consider the US for higher education. It's a country full of possibilities. Please keep on the great work that you're doing. And if anyone have any type of entrepreneurial mindset and they want to set up business, the other recommendation would be to consider E-2 visa.
People say that US immigration policies are most easiest all over the world. Which things made it this much easier?
Well, the US immigration policy, it depends, right? Whether it's easy or it's complex, it depends on which administration is in charge. Right now, we have an administration that is extremely immigrant friendly. Nevertheless, the process is complex. We have been trying to do immigration reform for a long time. There have been many bills that have been introduced in Congress over the years, but we haven't passed that into law. So a lot needs to be done. A lot has been done. And then there are policies that are basically a work in progress. But overall, we are a land of immigrants. We feel, this country has given all of us a lot of opportunities. And it's just amazing to see Bangladeshis doing so well in the United States.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your precious time. And today we have to just end our show. And thank you so much once again for this information, for this important things that you discussed with us.
Absolutely. You're most welcome. It was my absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed my time talking with you. Thank you, RTV. Thank you, viewers. I wish you all the very best.
Thank you, ma'am. So viewers, that's all for today. I'm Indrani signing off now from Immigration Law, but hope to see you all in the next episode. Goodbye.